I want to introduce first our speakers. So I will start with Kate Vass. Kate Vass is the founder and creative director of the Kate Vass Gallery, focusing on generative art. In 2016, she opened her advisory firm Fair, consulting specializing in finance, art innovation strategies, and consulting fintech and arttech startups. In 2020, she created the Women Supporting Women Foundation, supporting women in art and tech. Next is Andrés Reisinger. Andrés is original from Argentina. He's an artist creating creative projects in his studio in Barcelona. He is named as one of Forbes 30 under 30 artists creating and designing the future of the arts, and is the winner of the Young Guns Art Directors Club in New York City, and a very successful artist. Welcome. Next is Beatriz Ordovás, who is International Director, Head of Digital for Europe, and specialist in the 20th Century Art Department at Christie. She leads the company efforts in Iberia for 20th century art, and she's the company's leads the company's digital strategy in the continent, and among her many works, she has had an instrumental role in securing key works like Refik Anadol's Living Architecture Casa Batlló, Barcelona. And last but not least, we have Joe Kennedy, who is the co-founder and director of Unit London, founded in 2013 with Johnny Burt. In 2020, Unit London launched Platform, an innovative virtual exhibitions program. And in 2021, Kennedy created the first artwork-led platform for NFTs as part of the Unit London brand. He acts as a young patron of various cultural institutions, including Tate, the Cervantes Gallery, and the Royal Academy. In 2019, Kennedy was named as one of Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneurs. So we have a great group of speakers, and just to introduce very briefly the subject for this talk, as you can see, is titled NFTs, Now What? So we are in this moment where, as you know, like a year and a half ago, Christie's ignited the NFT market, which was already there, but really came into prominence with the default sale, which was previously mentioned. Then this market spread like wildfire. It even had some people burning original works to sell them as NFTs. Many things happened very fast. Many things that created also kind of a weird situation for NFTs. Not everyone knew what was going on or what they were about. There was a lot of bad press, there was a lot of enthusiasm. At the same time, the galleries, the actors in the contemporary art field, and also those that have been working for decades in the digital art world, were hesitant to join this crazed market. And but at the same time, there was a lot of creativity and innovation going on under the radar most of the time in places like Hic et Nunc, a platform where artists were creating NFTs and selling them on the Tezos blockchain for very low amount of money, building a community around this platform and around Twitter. And so the market evolved. By the end of last year, there were also already big galleries, contemporary art galleries, already entering the NFT market. Then we also have seen top-tier artists like Olaf Eliasson or Damien Hirst, Marina Abramovich, Ai Weiwei, joining also this NFT market or creating NFT projects. And so we are at this moment, after all that has happened, at a moment where this kind of market seems to have been diminished. It's not so strong as it was a year ago, but still it has already made an impact. There's already a lot of marketplaces going on. There's already a lot of innovation and a lot of people who believe in this register on the blockchain, and what you can have with an NFT, with smart contracts, with everything that is involved.
And in 2017, blockchain art exhibition, it was called Perfect and Priceless. You gave a very good reference that I'm really also engaged in this sort of thing, and we all know that he's a contemporary artist. So he did a collaboration with Kevin Bosch back at the time, and the part of the exhibition, just the entire exhibition, was taking place physically in a physical space, and no one could even say that it's an NFT exhibition because we did not show any single NFT per se. Even CryptoPunks, which we exhibited for the first time as an artwork, it was more like a conceptual ultimate punk where the collector was challenged in a certain way to understand the future value, whether it will be digital or whether it will be physical. When we showed the work by Kevin Bosch and Ai Weiwei, it was a tokenization of moments that they have shared together in Berlin over 3 days, and again it was more questioning the value from philosophical perspective of how we look at the social economical things. And you know that majority of the talents, they always foresee the future. That's why, you know, the earlier pioneers, they already started to use blockchain or innovative technologies, not necessarily only blockchain, but also different algorithms from artificial intelligence, machine art, etc., etc. Back at the time, and with the technological progress, it's just a new tool that artists use to express themselves. So it's not something that here we're talking, or NFTs is not contemporary art. For me, it is contemporary art, and it's just one of the tools of how artists express themselves. We have seen different types of groups, you know, that's why maybe we have still misunderstanding. The ones who've been in code and programming for the last 10 years, of course, they mastered the skills, and for them it's more like natural set of skills that they can also apply and say, oh, I can become an artist now, right? But that not necessarily will make him a good artist. You know, it can make him a good programmist or coder. And for people who are specializing in this generative art per se, like myself, you know, I can say, okay, maybe audience like the art, but if you look really at the core, it's just like one work or one code, and it's nothing revolutionary. I've seen it already back at back at the pioneers from 60s, 70s, and 80s, you know, and it has a history, generative art, for the last 70, 80 years. So we are not talking about anything new. It's just, again, one of the tools hyped by the mass media, calling it NFTs, so they can sell it better, that nobody understands what the hell the abbreviation stands for, non-fungible token, whatever that means. But it's just literally a tool to transact, and dealing with the digital art. We have museums, we have collectors. I collect myself also photography and digital art for many, many years. I mean, that was my first question when I had to deal with video art or with natively digital art, how to transact to the client that there is no traces left, that it is secure, that it also will be preserved in a proper manner, and that I don't have to run around with all the certificates of authenticity that can be lost or kind of damaged. And blockchain, or you know, was just a registry, you know, that kind of enabled this transaction of digital files, and confirm the scarcity of it. So, like, you know, when we start to say, oh, NFTs are here to stay, sure, yes, you know, because it's just a tool. We are not differentiating that NFTs is an art. Back in 2017, 18, 19, we did not call it NFTs. Nobody named it like that. Everybody was referring to that as a crypto art or blockchain art, which is also not entirely correct. Because at the end of the day, it's just ultra contemporary. I mean, if you define contemporary art, it's literally what reflects our reality, and our reality is digital. We all live in our phones, AI, Snapchats, Instagram, Web2, Web3, Twitter, you know, how we communicate, particularly after pandemic. And I think, you know, it's just, you know, acceleration of things again, which happened naturally after pandemic, and you know, economical perspective that Web3 is now kind of used to commercialize even more and to interact with the audience more. It's a bit mix up, you know, instead of collectibles and art. The last thing I want to say, because we have to all speak, where I can speak for another 2 hours, is like, if you look at the crypto like society, you know, whatever is going on from the social media perspective, and all the sales that everybody is talking about, like big names like Beeple sales or from 2000 to 2020, and then we have other big names sales in of CryptoPunks or Bored Apes or art blocks, or, you know, different high edition projects, or brands coming into the space. This is not art. This is like collectible, and one of the collectibles, like Christie selling also collectible, I don't know, Porsche from 1964, nobody questions that. But if Christie sells some collectible like Bored Ape, everybody's saying, oh my god, this is not art. No, it's not, but it's a collectible, you know. And when it comes to closer look what's going on in the market, the proper artworks and true pioneers, they're still there, but it's very, very little percentage still of good art, but there is one. And that's why, you know, the small and medium galleries, this is like the hardest job of all for us, to do our homework, do our research, find these talents, differentiate them, and place them on the surface so we can exhibit them, and try to make it in a sensible way that it's kind of understandable for the audience to engage with, like physical and digital form, where people can look, ask questions and touch, and maybe then look at the digital component and say, yeah, okay, but how do I experience the digital and how do I experience the physical different way? You as an audience, you know, you have sensory things, you know, from psychological perspective, also how you interact with the physical work and how you interact with the digital work, right? So I guess that's where we overlap in our understanding for education and exhibition with Joe as well. That still people need both at this time to relate to this new type of NFTs, whatever, or contemporary art, I will call it.
Contemporary digital art.
Yes,
people
something like that. Yeah.
So let's connecting to Joe. Joe, you launched Institute, and it was like 6 months after this big sale by people. I can imagine. I remember how that impacted the whole art world. So can you tell me a bit the whole process? What takes you from that realization, from what is happening, seeing what is happening in the art market with NFTs, to launching your own platform?
Yeah. So we actually started work on Institute before the sale happened with people. And it took us a long time to build because I essentially project managed it myself, and I'm certainly no tech wizard, so it took us a lot longer to actually launch. I think that time was really all about learning for me personally. I think for everybody else, as soon as Christie's announced that sale, I think it became, you know, the hot topic in the art world and beyond. And people, I certainly took the time to really take a deep dive into the space and learn, because the art world that we know, the collectors, the network, the audience, and the artists were all equally kind of confused and baffled by this new space. Our collectors and our audience weren't the crypto collectors. They weren't collecting NFTs already. They weren't buying digital art really, because for a long time digital art had no way to be monetized effectively. And what NFTs and blockchain have brought in is the ability for those digital artists to really have some value ascribed to their work, an intrinsic sense of value. And that for me was the turning point. And I had a collector of mine who's been a big collector from our program and collects a lot of blue chip kind of Western contemporary artist, but has also been very deep in crypto and NFTs for a long time, and collects a lot of the kind of early PFP projects like Bored Apes and the CryptoPunks. And he was just fanaticizing about NFTs to me. And as soon as I learned about the kind of the value of blockchain to be able to provide a public ledger at scale and provide provenance for every single sale and transaction, I started to realize actually this is the transparency which is going to open up the doors for more people to access our industry, because the big barrier of entry still to the art market for participants is the lack of transparency, whether it's pricing transparency, transactional transparency. And not only that, but the artist can be paid a royalty on every single sale that happens. So the idea of flipping in the art market, which is so so frowned upon in the NFT space, is actually something which can be beneficial, because the artists are paid a direct royalty and you're able to trace every single transaction that happens. So for me and for our gallery, accessibility has always been at the core of what we wanted to do, and transparency coming into the industry in an infrastructural way, as in blockchain provides the actual technology and infrastructure that underpins every transaction. We're gonna be able to kind of live out our ethos in a much more sustainable, long-term way. And I've spoken here a few times now. I'm basically part of the furniture, I feel like, in this place. But the first time I spoke here, which was like I think 5 years ago, I spoke about Instagram and the power of Instagram, social media, which is obviously a kind of a Web 2 product. And it was met with a lot of cynicism, and the room was very uncomfortable for a little while. And now, a couple of years later, Instagram is sort of the de facto market tool for artists and galleries and participants. And the fear and doubt that we've seen towards NFTs and the cynicism that we've seen towards NFTs, I think, is also, it's symptomatic of a sort of reaction to change, which I think is fear-based. If you look at like how Web 1 went to Web 2, went to Web 3, all of those big technological shifts and innovations have dramatically changed the way that we interact with the world, the way that we communicate with each other, and it has, broadened access to the market for collectors and artists. So we now have a much more diverse art world. We have a much more inclusive art world, purely because the connectivity is so much greater than it was. And what we're seeing now with the move towards Web 3 is just an extension of that. So we're accelerating connectivity worldwide. We're allowing people access to new ideologies, new ideas, new ways of thinking than ever before. And what I think this will do to our industry is huge. I don't think it can be underestimated, the value of a public ledger, transparency in our industry, and the ability to bring in an entirely new audience and network of collectors and artists artists who've been resigned to just doing digital brand campaigns because galleries wouldn't take them on because they couldn't sell their work. Well, that's now changing. We as a gallery now represent 3 digital artists, all of whom work with blockchain, particularly generative artists, which I think is a really exciting genre within this industry. There are coders and computer scientists now who, since the 60s, really have been using machines and autonomous computers to make digital art, but have never really been recognized. If they're very lucky, they might show a biennial. They might be included in kind of more abstract museum shows and institutional exhibitions, but they've never had gallery representation. They've never been able to sell their work, and it doesn't matter how many biennials you do, any artist will tell you if you're not able to sell your work, then it becomes quite difficult.
Radar of majority of other markets. That's true.
Actually, one of the pioneers, Manfred Moore, he once told me that he was presenting his work as computer art, and at some point he stopped telling people he did the work with the computer because people liked it.
Yeah.
If they found out he hadn't done this with the pen and ink, then they wouldn't want to buy it. So,
right.
Yeah, this has been there for a long time.
I think science and art have kind of traditionally been diametrically opposed, and I think we're now moving into a space where those disciplines are merging much more. And I think computer programmers who use coding language to build algorithms it's the language in the same way that painting is a visual language, in the same way that poetry is language. And I think they're now able to use their skill set in a more creative way. So it's not just a product engineered piece of code, it's actually something which has a creative output, and I think that's really exciting.
And and one thing notably, when you presented this platform, it was presented as an our world platform. So you were kind of pointing the fact that this comes from a contemporary art gallery. So I was wondering if you see that around this time, Pace was already entering NFTs, and now there's more and more. Do you think that it is when we have an enough large number of actors in the contemporary art world who have a reputation that this can actually be accepted more widely, or
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like the acronym, like, you know, NFT is just such a problematic term now, and like as Kate said, it's really NFT isn't art in of itself. It's just a tool to record something on a ledger, essentially, right? So I think it's important to move the conversation away from talking about NFTs and more towards digital art, because it's what the tool allows for digital artists to do. I think there was, you know, at the height of the boom in sort of 2021 of NFTs, we all were interacting with marketplaces, which are kind of like de facto marketplaces. So there's a lack of curation, there's a lack of storytelling. You know, aside from some more curated platforms, and I think Artbox is a really nice example of like how they curate their work. It's very disorienting for collectors who, you know, have read a headline in The Guardian, they jump into OpenSea and they're just confronted with thousands of works of all kinds, a lot of which is not what you would necessarily associate with contemporary art, because the artistic integrity of some of them, let's say, are not quite there. So I think there's since the market correction, there's been a sort of pulling through of artists who are making real important work. And a lot of the big projects have fallen away. People have lost a lot of money doing that, but that happens in every big kind of boom and every technological advance. But now I think that the importance is on, you know, curation and identifying the artists who are going to be historically relevant and important in the space, and giving them a platform where we can have a critical discussion about their work, as opposed to just talking about the market prices.
Beatriz, obviously, Christie has had an important role in, as I said, igniting this or making it very, very visible. We could say now, within the NFT market, that auction houses have gained like a leading role in the primary market, and now Christie's is launching Christie's 3.0, so it's as a platform for NFTs too. So how do you see that impacting the relationships of auction houses with the other actors in the contemporary art market, so galleries, artists, collectors?
Well, I think NFTs really is like a technology who has shaken the art world in a way which had not been changed before, and it is not only like a challenge for auction houses but also for galleries, for artists to coexist with this new technology, which is one of the biggest things that has happened in a very long time. I think the art world has been operating the same way, like for many, many years and decades. And suddenly here it comes a technology, you know, where like the question, NFTs, now what? Well, that's a great question, because no one knows what's the what goes after. We are all learning as we go. It moves incredibly fast because technology moves incredibly fast, and we are just trying to adapt and survive. When we presented the world with the people artwork, you know, it's like it wasn't the first time we were using like it was probably one of the first digital artworks, but we had tried before a great American collection that we saw in 2018, and all of the works were registered in the blockchain, and we were very happy to tell people, you know, that was a great way to trace the works forever, that had like no impact and no one really cared about it. Then we went with another digital work. Nothing really happened, you know, we had a very humble result, and suddenly people came, and we weren't really expecting that this was gonna create such a hurricane, in a way that I have to confess, we weren't really fully ready, you know, for what happened, and I think no one was. So to start with, we estimated the work as unknown, as nothing we've done before, just like trying to tell the public, really, we don't know where to start. We believe digital art that has been already transacted in the last years in digital platforms, you know, has to be at an entry level, which is for everybody. So we started the bids at $100, and I can't remember. I think we had like 350 people registered to bid on the lot, and on the first like hour it went from $100 to $1 million, and then it remained open for a few days until it was sold for $69 million, and the whole world just went crazy, you know. But it was a challenge for us because we thought we were just selling a digital work, because we feel it is important we have things in our auctions that represents what's happening in the world today, you know, and digital art is very much there. We should embrace it as as any other kind of art. I agree, we shouldn't be saying NFT art as we don't say canvas art, you know, or work on paper art. It's just contemporary art and another way of expression, so should definitely be like with Christie's in our contemporary sales. But then again, it's like we had like these wallets accepting cryptocurrencies. Everything moved so fast. We had to do sales off-chain, and we realize it's a world that it operates incredibly quickly. Whenever I tell somebody in the digital world, I'll get back to you in a week time, they look at me like, yeah, as if I was alive, like I will be alive in a week time. It's like, I said a week, not 10 years, you know, but that's already a lot of time. So we are in the end like an institution with our process and different departments. So when we told like the buyer, yeah, hold on one moment, like in a month time you will have your work and everything will be said. It's like, you're kidding me, you know. So we also had to learn, and we were challenged, you know. So and I think Christie's 3.0 it is another step, you know, of us getting up to speed, or at least trying, where it took us a while to launch it, because we saw a lot of companies and initiatives just coming up very quickly because of, well, I guess all the speculation that it was in digital art last year, and we didn't want to come out just with something which was patchy but it was like just to be there. We really wanted to develop something, understanding better what was needed, and trying to blend kind of both worlds, traditional world, which makes me laugh because I never thought of our collectors in the contemporary department as traditional at all, with the people transacting in the digital platform. So trying to find a place where both they could meet and kind of transact there, you know, and do these sales on chain, which they are very important, and and many other things, you know, that we realize that they are actually key for us to.
But now through these platforms, as you've done, I would say with people too, you are introducing artists into the market.
We are. Yeah.
So you are having a new role that traditionally auction houses would deal with secondary market. Mm-hmm. So how do you see that new role of the auction houses?
Yeah, very well. Like, I think, you know, it's like digital art being commercialized is something so new that although we've always operated on the secondary market, that secondary market is not that big yet, where we can actually go and play a role yet. We have seen some people who have been great digital collectors that they have put their collections up for auction for charity reasons, or just because they want to depart with it. But if you think about it, it is very quickly to do that, and I think there is still a long way for these artists to develop, and for these great collections that they were like put together and thought about very early when no one was really looking at digital art, you know, to come to market. So it's true, we are working a lot directly with artists. That's probably one of the new things that digital art has brought to us, and it's really exciting. That doesn't mean that galleries would not have a role, as Kate and Joe were saying before. It's like everyone can make an entry really in the digital world. Is being democratized, which is great, you know, but also is a world which is huge. It's impossible to follow everything that has been happening, and I think there is room for everybody. We just need to find what is that we each believe in it. Like galleries now, you have galleries who decide to like basically hire like very contemporary artists or African art or minimal art because they connect with it, and then they will have an audience that they will go to them because they know they will filter everything that is going on and they will be presented with what they like. Well, I think that is what we need to do. We need to find what is that we like and what is that we want to present the world with, and we each have our parcel.
Thank you. Andrés, so connecting with the role of the artist, you had a very huge success with the Hortensia Chair in 2019. So I wanted to ask you, in this accelerated market and where an artist can have such a huge success so rapidly, how did that impact your creative process, and how do you see now as an artist from your perspective what we're all talking about here?
The question is very interesting. Let me split it in some parts. First of all, you have to think that I've been working with digital tools for more than 15 years. So, not all the time I've been creating the art that I'm doing at the moment, and I will be changing the things that I create throughout my life, because that's the idea, right? To know myself. I don't know who I am. I know myself by creating the art that I create. So I need to do it. So if I'm using these tools, my parents bought me a computer when I was like 6 years old, something like that, for a variety of reasons. From that moment on, I started to dedicate a lot of time into that space, into connection to the internet. Very late because it was cheaper. So we had with my brother 2 hours during the night, and at that moment was a way of understanding. I'm born in Argentina, outside of the center. So at that moment was something to understand for me that not everything happened in my neighborhood. I was not traveling around the world to meet new people or to understand that we're different niches that were interested and people that were creating those niches and expanding those possibilities, the same that I was doing in my bedroom. So internet for me was the connection. Digital is one more way of connecting, and I was having conversations with people around the world that I never met about how can I improve the way I was doing what I was doing. Something that couldn't be possible to do it in Hurlingham when I was born, because nobody was doing that, not even close. So I think with that background, you start to understand that people that has maybe 20, 25 years working with those tools every day, like a painter works with paint and brushes, it's a change of perspective. It's not that now that we are using phones, people is creating art with digital tools. A lot of people born in the moment where those tools, with those digital systems were presented. And we're very basic, we're very archaic. And that's why I think it's very interesting how all of us, we are seeing that from very different perspectives, but at the same time all the same. We can't say NFTs in an art context, because it's okay, it's just a medium. I would like to call it medium because it's not only a tool, it's more as a medium, because in a medium you can use it to transport things, right? So a tool can be helpful in that transportation, but imagine a project in digital that it's impossible to be created in physical. Just to use an example, one of my artworks that is called Pollination, what I did was open up the possibility for my collectors to change the artwork they already bought, they already collected throughout a year period. And that's impossible to do in a physical. You have to deal with shipping, you have to deal with burned pieces, physical pieces. So in these pollination seasons, they could pollinate their artwork, and depending on when they pollinate, and if they pollinate, they will receive a totally different artwork as a result of it. So that's something that is pretty basic and easy to do on blockchain. It's handling all the hard work, even if it's there are some like technological problems and like system failures. That's good. I think it's part of. I usually embrace that. I've been born with computers that were crap and were always failing. And I think that's part of being.
I think it's a part of the beauty to have this randomness.
Exactly, yeah.
Randomness is very important.
And weakness.
Weakness.
I mean, a system that is weak, it's more close to a biological system.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible. It's what makes us. Like what we really like about art is that it's very biological. We don't like art that it's perfect and it's printed as a computer done. Like, computer is a failing tool as us. We can go and try to be better ourselves every day, but we will not be perfect. And perfect is boring, so.
And what about creating in this ambience where you have so much attention, you have to advertise your work on Twitter, you have to be there, the prices rise very quickly. How do you react to that, and what can happen next?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things to say about the market. From an artist's perspective, there are artists that are more into the market than in their own art. I prefer not to be so much into the news of the market or how it's reacting to whatever I'm doing, but I'm not blind. So, and new social media tools and the way we are connecting, we are exposed to all that information, even if we don't want to. I mean, I get notifications if someone liked something that I did last week. So it's impossible to avoid that. But I think it's something that it's very important for the creators of this era to, from my personal standpoint, that we have to be more mindful than ever, because the information is crazy. People is nuts for more information and spreading a lot of kinds of information and feedbacks and comments and whatever. That I think it's necessary, it's good, but you can't be led by that. You can't take that as a guide for your career. You know, it's like you started doing this because of something else, not because of people like your work or not. Of course, it's beautiful to receive feedback, but as there is beautiful feedback, there's also haters and people that will want to try to put you in different positions. So it's that moment. I remember, like 2020, the early 2020. I remember that I got like an adrenaline rush, like for a month or so, and then I started to meditate more than ever, because it was something unreal. It was something that was very in the moment. Like, if you think about when you are nervous, when you are anxious, that it's very, very tiny fragment of time. Well, imagine that being zoomed in through 1 or 2 years. So that was like our perspective as artists. We felt that for a long period of time. And if we are not fresh and we are not very calm and we still do the same that we do, I think we lost our minds, and that's why many projects started and failed like the next day, because they were born out of that ancient anxiety and turbulence of the waters.
You see, we are all facing challenges as an artist, you know. It's like, and also having the capacity to be able to like abstract yourself from everything. Well, that will, for example, make a difference from the artists that they will move forward and they will keep on creating great things, to the artists that they will just follow what people are telling them to do and they will get lost in the way.
So in general, so much of what has happened this last year has been like riding the wave, like adapting, like and it feels like the market is still accelerating. But I would want to ask you all if you think this is good, this is energizing, that things keep happening. You would rather things settle down a bit, that there is more time to kind of reach something more stable. How do you feel about this?
Sorry, I think stable is it's impossible. You just go from one side to the other. The idea is not to get into the extremes, but I think it will continue to happen this. But we already
maybe not from week to week.
Exactly.
More time.
Exactly.
We can get some holidays sometimes.
Digital is like crazy. I mean, you're dealing with all people in the world that have different hour ranges, and so it's kind of impossible to stop. That's why it's so energetic, and that's why I think you have to be very conscious of how you take that energy pill and how when don't, because it's quite intense.
Yeah, but maybe mostly in the beginning there was more this energy of easy money that made it so frenzy. Now it seems like people understand this takes time, this takes work, this takes commitment and knowledge. So how do you see it, this aspect of the acceleration that I was mentioning before?
Thank you for asking, because for me, I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask this question, because for me it was not about the money, and I was the one behind, you know, actually introducing many digital or generative artists to blockchain. They didn't know about blockchain. They didn't want to use it. They were also fearful of that. They also didn't want to be associated with sort of scam, or there was no trust between the marketplace and the artists. And back at the time, the prices were also very affordable. That was one of the reasons why I opened up the gallery, to make it affordable, to make it inclusive, to make it transparent for collectors, and to you know, to put the artist at first, you know, like not usually, and be friendly, you know, to connect collector and the artist. So I remember, like, you know, the differences when you go out on Twitter, when you have to, and when you talk to an artist and said, under my umbrella, I will introduce you to this marketplace. We can curate, because back at the time they didn't curate anything, and the whole idea of the crypto community is total decentralization, that you don't need to curate actually. You just connect the artist and the collector, and that's it. There is no galleries, no curation, nothing. It's just this utopian idea kind of evolved into replicating more or less the traditional art world, with a very, very minor difference, but at the same time the biggest one is that the artist, the power shifted towards the artist. Monetary power, the decision-making power, also the brand of the artist, you know, it became first. So the gallery, the marketplace, the curator, it becomes a bit secondary. And to be honest with you, we are more like a supporters to sustain their artistic value. And when I was introduced into this blockchain, you know, I said, okay, if you are afraid to be there at the marketplace, you're afraid of failure, or to be associated with a scam, or potentially with some frauds, you know, of marketplaces, we will curate for you, and we will do it like as a project, you know, as an exhibition, or as a part of it. And they've been very grateful since then, because once the pandemic happened and they had all the physical shows cancelled, all the museum cancelled, everything was just literally, majority of them, they were starving, they didn't have anything to eat. But they already were like exposed to this new tool, you know, how they can present their work. And those artists now, they are called OGs on the space. They're literally the ones who've been, I was dragging by hand saying, please sell. And it was $50, $200. We're not talking about big prices here or something. So when you say, how long does it take? It takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and a lot of belief. And to be honest with you, for smaller galleries, it's the hardest job of all, you know, to do and believe and motivate yourself every day. And the hype and what you say about this, people are coming into the space more and more for the money. You know, there are also many crypto collectors, as they say, they come for the money, but they stay for the love of art. And I think, you know, by rejecting this crypto space from the traditional art perspective, we are missing this opportunity to actually build something beautiful with the space, because if the space is empty, it has a tendency to fill itself, right? So in order to actually build and fill it in with the quality from the validators like Christie, Sotheby's, museums, curators, like really knowledgeable people who have so many years of experiences, so much to say, you know, come to the space, embrace it, and educate the new generation and fill the space with the quality. Instead of we are just, you know, pushing it away, differentiating, this is NFTs, this is CAM, and this is contemporary art. No, please come, please help to fill it with the quality.
And in that sense, and that would be the final question for you all, cryptocurrencies are still volatile, e-wallets are still complicated for a lot of people, blockchain is still scary for a lot of people. Can we dissociate NFTs from crypto? Do we want to do it? Is there a possibility to go, as you said before, to see it only as art and then have all the technological layer maybe more transparent or not so connected to this? How do you see that possibility?
Yeah, I think going back to what you were saying before, I think you know, the pace of this space is so fast, it's so frantic at times. That, you know, when you look at the two communities, there's one which is very fast-paced, very transactional, always accelerating, moving forward, in the art world, which kind of wants to cling to its old ways. So there's like a natural kind of dichotomy there between the two communities. And what we found when we launched our platform was that although we wanted to onboard traditional collectors into, you know, collecting digital art and NFTs, all of the people who started buying from our platform were these crypto-rich community, and we had no idea who they were. So they were all brand new collectors for us. They were buying with ETH, they were buying with Bitcoin, and it's going to take a while for the traditional community to actually start collecting. There is kind of like infrastructural products and tools now which are allowing people to pay with a credit card or buy with fiat, so you don't actually have to have a connection to cryptocurrency in order to buy and start collecting digital art, which I think is a very important barrier that's being removed at the moment. But the fast-paced volatility of it is just the nature of the space. There has been a market correction. It is slightly slower now. There's more of a kind of focus on quality and curation, as opposed to, you know, the big boom that we saw last year. But I think, you know, like if you think from a gallery's perspective, or from an art world perspective, there's such a proliferation now of galleries, of artists that we can see and access every day on Instagram, who were previously kind of unknown because they didn't have the tools to promote themselves. And we need more collectors to come in and support the space. And obviously you bring in new collectors who have different backgrounds, they have different tastes. So it's all part of, you know, if you look at the commercial ecosystem of the gallery, if we can bring in new audiences, new people, as Kate was saying, it's so important that we actually, like, you know, embrace and then educate this community on what the values of art are, you know, how it can help improve our societies, how it can help encourage creative thinking. And I agree, by kind of keeping NFTs and crypto at arm's length and by dismissing it, we're actually missing a huge trick and really paying a disservice to artists who deserve the opportunity to be able to showcase their work and engage with audiences and have a say and have a platform. That's really the most important thing. And for us as a gallery, you know, we're doing everything that we can to provide that context for artists to be seen not just as NFT artists or as crypto artists or as whatever, but as contemporary artists in their own right.
Can I comment on something very important? You are saying,
just,
you know, like about crypto and about if we can eliminate crypto. I think, you know, financial markets were disrupted much earlier than the art world. Art world was actually one of the last sectors to be disrupted with cryptocurrencies and NFTs. But if our social economical system does not work in a traditional model anymore, we are having the whole world is upside down from a political economical perspective. What can we expect in the crypto space? It obviously does replicate, you know, the tendencies of depreciation, but at the same time, instead of saying, can we just replace the cryptocurrencies and pay with credit cards, I think maybe we should consider again their total embracement of decentralization, whatever, if it's possible or not, or there are already tools that also central banks are implementing and giving the opportunities to the mass market to transact with Bitcoins and Ethereum. So you actually don't even need to come up with the new tools because it's going to be regulated at some point. And it's just, you know, this merge will naturally happen.
For me, to your question, and I'll be very brief, we have to go. I really think we need to make this technology more user-friendly, you know. The technology is there, but as a consumer of that technology, it doesn't matter if it's as a collector or because you want to buy something else, you shouldn't be worrying about how everything works. Like when you go online to do some shopping, you know, and you just don't care how they created, you know, the way for the payment, and you do not worry about that. Just put your credit card details, you buy what you want, and you have it at home. Well, I think there is a lot of background work that needs to be done in the field, you know, so we can make these user-friendly, and not only like the digitally native people who have been embedded in this world for many years know how to use it. So then just make it more accessible, basically.
So we have maybe 10 minutes, so I would like to open the floor for the audience if anyone has a question. Questions over here. Yes, I have a question there.
Hello. So apart from artists that are creating digital art, some museums are also entering in this world of NFTs, and they are usually to have more money for other activities. They are transforming traditional works of art into NFTs to have some funds. What do you think about that? And another thing was a recent article I read in the newspapers about someone that has a Frida Kahlo design and transform it into NFTs, but born the original work of art. Do you think this is an act of speculation to sell the NFTs more expensive? Or thing? I know this was so frightening for me, you know, that people can think about burning or destroying the original work of art and transforming it in NFTs, because I think both ways are good to express artists, you know. So what do you think about that?
Okay. So first question, which is about museums creating NFTs from their collections. What is your opinion on that?
I think it's, to be honest, I think there's a long way for it to go. It can develop, the technology can develop, and the use case can develop a lot. But I think, you know, the value of NFTs, as like we've kind of spoken about, touched on, is it's a public record, and so there's a conditional relationship that you can build as an artist or as someone who's created an NFT with the holder of the token. That could be basically the provision of access to you know, for a museum, whether that's you know, private tours of the museum or, you know, invitations to events with the curators. But it's amazing as a secondary revenue stream for a museum. You know, museums are all in need of more funding and more revenue, and if they can leverage works in their existing collection and leverage what they have to be able to produce more revenue, I think that's a fantastic thing. It's one of the values of NFTs that I think needs to be explored more and more. I mean, it happens with the PFP projects that we see. you know, they basically act as sort of membership cards to a very exclusive club, and I think that's something that museums can leverage more. I just don't think it's been done yet in the most optimum way.
For me, from an artistic perspective, it's not very interesting, you know, because everything that Andrés just told us about his way of exploring the different media and developing himself and expressing himself, you just don't see it on a work that it was created by somebody else trying to express something and just creating a digital image of it and selling it. You know, I think it's interesting for institutions, perhaps, from a traceability point of view, to use the technology, and I think it's interesting for institutions not just like not doing that from a commercial perspective, but perhaps, you know, to find a place in the metaverse where they can create like a digital building of their institution and surprise the world, you know, with the works that they have and try to engage with a new audience.
Also, as Andrés mentioned, this involvement of collectors with the process. I believe, for instance, museums could make an NFT of an artwork that needs restoration, and then with the proceeds of that sales, restore the artwork, and then the collectors would have the image of the restored artwork, which kind of involves people in the process. Something like this, more positive, which is not just acquiring something that is on a museum, could be possible, I think.
And also, I think there's a gap there. There is no feeling that there's a whole generation that it's digital native. We have born with computers and phones, and we have friends that we never see in real life ever. I think institutions, traditional institutions, need to integrate that generations, because they will still be this generation forever. We are not going to be in the world so long. So I think it's very important to be inclusive for all that people that are in the world right now and are like less than 30 years old.
Yeah, I think there are two misunderstandings because the question had like NFTs and then fractionalization component in it. You know, if we talk about the blockchain, not even necessarily NFTs, you know, how to use this technology and help the museums to preserve, to deal with the transportation, to deal with the preservation, archives. I think blockchain technology can actually help a lot and make the process much easier. But of course it requires a lot of funding, and it's again institution. It's very difficult with the decision making to kind of preserve. But I see a lot of museums going building up virtual spaces already, you know, just, you know, to engage with the wider communities and not necessarily deleting the physical, you know, so both coexist in parallel for more inclusivity and for physical collections and NFTs as a utility tokens to get the membership or access, you know, certain types of exhibitions or works. I think it's just again another way of how to monetize and profit. Additionally, you know, because you need a lot of investments anyway as an institution to build this sort of thing. So necessarily bad, but I think the second question was about, you know, if the painting is tokenized like by fractions, and these little fractions are sold to the wider audience. Yeah, I don't think, you know, this is the same as NFTs, because it's a bit different topic, and also needs to be taken into consideration what's the purpose of it, you know, like why, and I guess, you know,
it's more a financial product.
It's more like in the financial, it sounds like more like a financial tool to deal with things rather than for the love of art or clientele.
Of course. More questions over there.
I've, no, it works. Yesterday, I think it was in London, there was the Galerie Climate Color Coalition conference, and I wonder what you guys are having to say to this in connection to NFT and blockchain and mining process and all that, because it's an impact to the environment, and we had Julia talking about all these things that are heavy on our society, one of which is climate. And what do you think about this and in terms of your work? And does it play any role in the discussion or?
I think there are blockchains that have been developed thinking on precisely on the environment, like for example Algorand, which more and more people are starting to use. The blockchain of Ethereum as well. They were very concerned, so they're changing their technology, and of course this has an impact. But so it does that we are all here today. I think when we were like when we fly to see the art fairs or auctions or with the food that we eat, I think everything we do nowadays really has an impact on the environment, and we just need to be conscious and careful. And this is a community that I think they also mind the environment, and that they're trying to develop technology where it's not very damaging. And as this comes through, we are all trying to join that boat.
Also, if we think in context, in a wider context, let me know of any other industry that has shifted from having an impact in climate to having almost zero in less than 7 years, completely. So it's pretty fast.
Because I believe proof of work is now over.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one is using proof of work anymore. Everyone is using proof of stake, which, if I'm correct, uses for minting the same amount of energy as a tweet, more or less. Right?
Yeah.
So we are more or less there right now.
Getting there fast.
Other questions? There was another question over there.
Oh, there's another one there as well for a long time.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, I have a question for you, going back maybe to what we were talking about, inclusivity. Something that I have not really understood why is this male total dominance on this new world of digital media, in the artist, in the collector, I mean, in a big percentage, while when you look at younger people, teenage girls are as hooked on digital media as boys. Do you think it's linked to the history of gaming, to investment in cryptocurrency? Why is it, or maybe I'm wrong and it's not, but my perception is it is more a male-dominated world than in this attention to gender, and it's new, and why is it like this?
I think I can take that question because we have a foundation, Women Supporting Women in Art and Tech, and I tend to say that in real world we have a huge disproportion of male domination, but interesting enough we have a better situation with the crypto artists or with the female crypto artists, and they are if you look at the statistics of sales or pricing, yes, there are some issues still, about maybe valuation and secondary market, the preferences, but the situation is actually much better, and I think it's also getting better in the traditional art world, for the last, if we look at the prices and sales from previous couple of years in Christie since Alphabets, we also see the huge development and shift towards the female art, and minimum 30%. I think it was like with the development in traditional world, and in crypto space for sure. This is much better situation also for collectors. Like if it was interesting statistics that I found that we are missing female collectors, a lot of male collectors in the traditional art world. When it comes to crypto collectors, one of the biggest whales are actually female in the space, and also if you look at the geographical perspective, I think Vietnam had 80% female collectors of NFTs, and this is interesting because in traditional art, I don't see these numbers at all. Yeah.
Maybe one last question, and yep, there.
Hi, this is a fascinating panel with a fascinating topic, and I think there are so many different threads you can pull, but one thing you mentioned that I think is really interesting and that poses all kinds of kind of philosophical or even sci-fi dimensions is the idea of historical museums selling NFTs of their artworks, and it kind of it raises the the question: does every historical artwork have an NFT? kind of like the Christian conception of the body and the soul? Is there an inherent NFT embedded within these artworks? And you know, I think a lot of museums are selling NFT editions kind of in the same way as selling a poster or a postcard of an artwork. But is there, you know, to sell the essential, like, you know, digital ownership of a historical artwork? Is that something that can be done? And should museums be worried about that, or or wary of it?
It's a great question. I mean, if you think about it, like, I don't think there's yet a great use case for creating a digital, like a token that accompanies a physical work or a physical asset, because it's very difficult to keep them connected, right? If I buy a physical painting which also has an NFT, I could sell the physical work and keep the NFT. So there's some hurdles to overcome there, but I think as we move forwards, I think, you know, because of the use case of provenance and the importance of provenance, I think it's not inconceivable that everything we buy in the future will have an NFT, because it provides not only tracing of transactions, but it also provides that status, that badging behavior. So when somebody purchases a Rothko and they put it in their dining room, it doesn't just give them that financial investment, but it also gives them access to a particular club. It gives them a sense of, you know, whatever, ego boosting or bravado to their friends. But it's that badging behavior which now can be publicly recorded on chain. So when people buy, you know, significant NFTs or digital artworks, they're not just buying it because of an investment. They're not just necessarily buying it because of the decorative or the aesthetic aspects, but they're also buying it because it gives them access to the community around that particular asset or work. And I think, will museums want to start selling NFTs, one of like unique NFTs that represent their physical paintings? I don't think so. I think they want to hold on to those works, and I think if they were to deaccession a painting, then maybe they would create an NFT to go with it. But I think for me, the big value and the big use case, as I said, for museums, I think is in bringing in additional revenue streams without them having to actually deaccession the works that are in their collection. Because the worst thing is if a museum's struggling so much for money, they go and privatize works in their collection, they go into hiding for generations. The purpose of museums is for public access to great works of art. And I think if we can use NFTs as a mechanism to support that, that's where we should be focusing, as opposed to sort of kind of monetizing existing works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also from the legal perspective, if you look, you know, non-fungible token in tokenomics of what this particular case, from legal perspective, it can be played that it can be a utility token, it can be security token, it can be both. It can also provide and now be integrated with some particular rights that you do sell to the audience, maybe to visit and experience, but of course not resell or copyright or something like that. So I guess it's just, you know, depending on the geography as well, and the kind of, again, regulations of how we look and regulate NFTs and digital assets. And I think now there are already a bunch of lawyers, you know, who are kind of saying, yes, we can do, and we just write within the token with the metadata once it's minted that this is the right that you have, but there are other rights you are not allowed to have. So it's sort of kind of agreement that you are getting into this transaction, which does not necessarily mean that you are losing the assets as a museum from your collection. You still keep the whole provenance, ownership, and everything. Maybe that's an alternative for the future.
Yeah. So that would be like our conclusion. It's clear that NFTs are here to stay. It's clear that there's much more than just this simple idea we had of the image, the JPEG sold for millions. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens next. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to our guests.